Before the episode starts, I would like to give a shout out to level designers. I honestly had no clue how difficult it was to just try and build a room. I mean, sure, the idea is in your head, but once you start boxing it out to try and make it feel populated, I began to realize the artistic value that's placed into every environment. And it's something that seems simple, but when I approached it, I didn't realize how many times I'd be going back to the drawing board because it just didn't feel right. So, props to y'all who kill it with those insane room designs and large-scale worlds that just make us players go, whoa. Welcome to episode 2 of a UE5 Beginner's DevLog of procedural dungeon creation. I'm CrashLog, and this is a Chronicle. So, for the first iteration, I was trying to pick a biome, and at first I really wanted to develop some sort of swamp area, but I wasn't able to piece together in my head how the tile sets would work, so I decided to move on to something I thought would be simpler, which was a mansion. In comes the Mansion of the Collected Swords. So, a little backstory on these guys. It was originally two houses, the Lovebeards and House Raniel, but after some stuff that I'm still working on, they essentially joined together into one house, and then later down the road became corrupted by dark miasmic magic. And then this ended up twisting their home into an ever-evolving dungeon, in a sense. Kind of like the Infinity Castle from Demon Slayer. And honestly, if I had the skill, I'd go full Inception with it, you know, walking on a flat floor 1 second, then up a wall the next, with combat kind of like happening while the room rotates and stretches around you. But before I break my brain on gravity and physics, I figured, step 1. Make the dungeon feel like a massive sprawling mansion that's formless in layout, but not lifeless. And I understand. From a procedural standpoint, this isn't exactly procedural, and it's more of a randomly generated layout. So, because of that, I needed to start understanding tile sets and what I wanted to accomplish with each tile set. The biggest hurdle I hit with this, I'm an analytical person and less artistic when it comes to the idea of level design. I was thinking about the entire place backwards, in a sense. Like, yes, I wanted to have large rooms, giant spaces, but at the same point, I also didn't understand connection points, like hallways, or stairwells, or just junctions. Like, how do you get to these areas and not feel overwhelmed, but also it doesn't feel entirely linear? And at first, I just tried designing some really large spaces, but they were excessively large and just didn't feel right. So maybe if I understood room dynamics a little bit better, I might be able to bring back those large pieces and then within them build smaller levels that you can parkour and explore. Yet at the moment, I'm trying to tackle the manageable before I go further, which kind of led me to my next issue, which is I have no clue what it's like to decorate a room or how to populate the space. And as I'm going through this, I realize, sure, I can create empty spaces and then call them tile sets, and as long as I add them into the room list, they'll spawn. But what do I want this space to feel like? How do I want the player to feel when they enter said area? And this kind of stumped me quite a bit, because honestly you'd think this would be such a simple question that I would think more about, and then I realized I have no clue about level design, so this was kind of the first major wall, if you will, that I hit, and maybe really just stare at UE5 completely clueless. I mean, I could look up images of all these different junctions and spaces, but it didn't help the concept that from a design's perspective, I didn't understand the way I wanted the world to feel, and then objectively how I wanted people to be able to play into it. So to me, it wasn't something that I planned correctly, and then I just figured, oh, I would be able to walk in and just kind of execute it. Like, how hard is it to make a room? And it really wasn't until I started staring at a bunch of tiles that I had named out, like, okay, this is going to be the hallway, this is the side stairs, this is some ballroom, this is a left junction. Like, I listed out at least 15 or 20 of these before I just deleted them, because I realized that when you look at it, it's just like, it's labeling a bunch of these rooms that knowing they'll be randomly pulled, and I could go into them and just be like, oh yeah, okay, this is the left junction, I'm just going to fully develop this area. But I think I redid the hallway at least 10 or 20 times before quitting out of UE5 and just being really confused as to why a hallway was so difficult to create. I mean, this is just a fucking hallway where I'm mapping it out, but it wasn't something that I really spent time thinking about, so it put a damper on my progress. And honestly, the hardest piece looking at this is understanding the architecture of a space. Like, to me, a mansion seemed easy from the tile set perspective because it's just a bunch of squares and rectangles, but building it is entirely different. And this kind of had me rethink what I was doing, so I decided to create a baseline. I needed to get myself a better idea of how I wanted to approach these tile sets. So I knew that I needed connecting rooms, and I knew that I needed core rooms. And I figured if I split this into like those two categories, I could explore a little bit more on how I want to approach smaller to like larger spaces, and also kind of understand what it's like to populate some of these areas a little bit better. And of course, in some larger end goal, I want to create places that are like puzzles so players can try and break the space or kite mobs while being able to move around the space. Almost kind of like some of the jumping puzzles that you see in Guild Wars 2 or Final Fantasy 14 or, just Dark Souls or any other game that you find some random area that you can go ahead and just jump around and break the area with. I don't know. But yet, without understanding the basics of a room layout, this kind of becomes difficult when building even a straightforward hallway and larger vertical slices. So I decided to go, okay, so I have my connecting rooms and I have my core rooms, and then I need to break this down even further, which is what is the centerpiece of the room, and then what are the surrounding pieces of the room. So like for a side stairwell, the centerpiece is obviously the stairwell that's going up. So what are the side pieces that I want to put in? Maybe I want some benches, maybe I want some artwork on the walls, but in like a larger space like the hallway, what is the centerpiece of a hallway? And then it becomes like, oh, maybe I need bookshelves that are kind of strewn across because the place has been, run amok, something like that. And it's kind of funny because looking back on this, I generally thought this was going to take like a day. Like I would just block out some simple procedural dungeon stuff. Okay, that took me about 10 hours, and then I was going to move on and create a couple of rooms, and like that was no big deal. And then I figured, okay, well after the rooms are created, I'll just move on and start building AI and enemy spawns and attack patterns. And, sometimes I don't understand how difficult just a tiny portion of the project can be compared to the even harder portions of the project, until I'm like knee-deep in the blackouts trying to figure out, well, okay, if I'm building this hallway, how should a rogue be able to parkour a space? Well, how should a tank just be able to stomp through and break it? And then, on top of that, just getting the general layout to exist is already difficult as is, but getting it to, like, understandably play well for two completely different archetypes is like a whole other problem on top of itself. And I keep catching myself wanting to skip ahead to the cool stuff, physics, destruction, but I forget if the initial concept is already huge, it actually helps to keep the first pass simple. I mean, yes, the world is already vast as is in my imagination, but the first implementation can be tiny. I don't need to build the final version of everything on day one. I mean, okay, so take the grand foyer, for example. I started with this really big base tile set. Just kidding, I thought it was big. And then I walked in it and I was like, this is like a side hallway. This is not impressive, this is not memorable, this is honestly kind of boring. And I feel like this is just a room that people are going to pass through and then forget it. So I had to stop and then go back and ask myself, okay, core piece of the room. What should it feel like when I walk into this space? What should it sound like when I walk into this space? And the first thought that came into my mind was water. So I decided, okay, let's have a fountain in the center, a chandelier above it, and then we'll have some decorative pillars around. So originally this was just a square room, started out with that in the center, and I was like, okay, cool, we're getting somewhere. Let's make it a multi-leveled space instead of just some, like, randomly small entrance because it doesn't feel, I don't know, exotic or luxurious enough. So when I added stairs, I had another idea. What if on the second or third level of the stairway, there was a waterfall? So I played with the thought of, okay, we have a waterfall coming from the top of the stairway, and then it'll split through the stairs and actually go all the way to the bottom and meet at the central fountain. And then, weirdly enough, off of that thought, for some reason in the back of my head, I was like, oh yeah, that would work from a plumbing perspective because the fountain in the front can go ahead and recycle the water back up to the waterfall, and then that way they're not, like, wasting water. I don't know why that's a thought, but at the same point, it feels like from an architectural standpoint and from a level design standpoint, it feels right in the space because for some reason the plumbing, which you don't even see, also feels right in the space. I'm not even done with it, and I definitely have a lot more passes to do on this, but I feel like from a vertical perspective and like a width perspective, it is feeling more like a space you could walk into and go, okay, this is kind of interesting. Like, all right, I have some options to go because you have the bottom level. There's like 2 exits that you can go out, and then you have the stairs, and then the first level of the stairs, you have a couple of exits, and then you go to the 3rd level and you have a couple of exits. So it feels a little bit more like a space. And then on top of that, I also am like, oh, I can't wait to actually play around with the water physics to see how that works. But, you know, moving on from that, the other room that I started to have a little bit more fun with was the long gallery, which honestly kind of feels like a schmort. It kind of feels like a shorter gallery right now, so I need to go back and kind of approach this. But it was the first environment where I was like, okay, there needs to be a ton of bookshelves, display cases, paintings, just stuff scattered around. And I'm thinking about this, oh, okay, I can start thinking about this from 2 separate angles. The angle of a tank and the angle of a rogue. So for my idea of a tank, I figured, okay, this should be like some sort of playground smash zone. You know, whatever clutter you have, you can use this to like body check obstacles into enemies. You know, like how cool would it be to watch a bookshelf go flying into somebody and then they get, you know, knocked away? Or, you know, you could just brute force through the room, break everything just because. And then from a rogue's perspective, this is like the parkour playground. Like, okay, you're vaulting over the bookcases, you know, you're dodging in between the shelves, you're using the space to like hide and reposition. And then from this, I realized, okay, this opens up like a totally different can of worms, which is non-static objects. You know, things that can be pushed, they have weight to them, they can be knocked over, they can be broken. And of course, the immediate me is like, oh yes, I gotta create the physics system, and like this has to be breakable, and then I gotta import an acid object, and then go ahead and make sure it actually works. I was like, whoa, calm down. We're gonna get to that. This is just the blocking out phase. I need to understand how the playground works. And of course, funnily enough, when I'm playing around with this, I didn't notice that UE5 had a physics now kind of button, and then I saw it and I clicked on it, and then all the stuff started moving in the room when I was walking into it. I think I just played with that for at least an hour or 2 because I was A, tired of building everything, and then B, this was just kind of cool to see that, oh, this actually just works in the space, and then I can build on top of that. So, fun little tidbit. I don't even feel like I wasted time. Honestly, it felt like a breather, if you will. Then I kind of felt like, oh yeah, I can tackle anything. And then the next room that really just kind of kicked me in the nuts was the grand stairwell. And I mean, I figured, okay, I want to create a massive stairwell. This is like a centerpiece that you come across every now and again that basically drops you off on multiple different floors. Like, you're not just going up 1 level or 2 levels. There's like maybe 3 or 4 levels with multiple different exits that you can go out of this thing. And in my head, you know, I just created the grand foyer. I just created this hallway. I'm like, oh, this is going to be easy. Until I was staring at a vertical rectangle going, what the fuck am I doing with this? I mean, yes, I wanted the room to feel awkwardly large. At the same time, I also want me or the player who goes into it to go, whoa, where do I go from here? You know, I don't want it to feel like, oh, look, it's this really cool stairwell like a lot of other games have, and then there's just like, oh, but you can't go up to the 3rd level, or, oh, that door's blocked off. Like, I wanted it to be a space that was something you could truly explore. And part of the inspiration for this space came actually from Freerun and the dungeon from the First Class Mage examination. And it's at the point where she's reminiscing about Himmel and wanting, and his like want to explore the entirety of dungeons because you wouldn't know what you could find in a place. And then of course he mentions like, oh, who knows, we could have missed a Grimroar, and you know, she's like, oh shit, let's go. You know, and so I want this connection piece to kind of be a moment like that for the players. Like, yes, you're gonna have people that are just gonna want to go straight to the boss room, get the loot, XP farm, and then leave. But I also know that, like a lot of my friends, there's those types of people where they're like, wait, I can go into this room and there's like an entirely different section this way. There's potential loot. There's, you know, cool things to find, or maybe just have fun exploring. And I realized at this point, oh, this is going to take me a while to understand how to develop just from a singular room perspective to make it feel like you're walking into a space that is going to give you options rather than you're walking into a space that's just going to look cool. So I'm still playing around with it, and it's definitely something that is going to probably take me a little bit longer than the other rooms to develop. So I think I'm just kind of putting that one on the back burner and giving myself a little more chance, or time, if you will, to go ahead and develop smaller space rooms so that when I get to the sort of grander stairwell piece, it starts to feel more alive when I'm putting stuff down. And I've kind of looked at this, bookmarked a couple of images, kind of taken a look at different types of animes that have these large, you know, spiraling areas, you know, kind of like, even looked at some movies, like you got Hogwarts, for example, with the way that stairwell moves and articulates. And so I have some ideas playing around in my head, but that's something I'm going to go ahead and come back to. So I feel like this was a good point to go, okay, maybe I can go ahead and stop on this for a second. And I was like, what is the next piece that I really want to try and focus on? So I haven't initially started on it yet, but the next piece that I want to focus on is my first combat enemy, or even my first AI, if you will, that gets spawned in and moves around the space. And I feel like the fact that I've actually reached this point kind of makes me feel a little bit better. It makes me want to vibe a little more with the project. So I want to progress down that direction to be able to even see a first enemy spawn in and walk around. And I realize this is not going to be like, oh, I'm going to tune this AI to do some crazy stuff, like it's going to run at you and then, you know, hop over all of the bookshelves and like charge you, you know. Again, hurdle in my head that needs to be accomplished, so I don't, you know, I need to do the basics, right, before going to the crazy stuff. And so I'm a little scared of this, honestly. I mean, I've bookmarked a couple of guides, and I have no clue how far I'll get into this before the next video, or if I'll end up just kind of doing a halfway point just because I'm pissed off at something. I will say, though, I did think I was going to accomplish a lot more before I put this video out. Yeah, I really did hit a wall so hard, and it put like a massive damper on my progress. And of course, you know, life is a thing. So I think this is kind of the angle where practice meets perfect, and I had to ask myself, okay, what's the current goal, and then what's the end goal? And I mean, this is really my first time ever trying to develop anything in UE5. I mean, I really don't understand any part of the process of how it is to make a game, or how it is to fully utilize the functions of UE5. And of course, also looking at my notes, I needed to try and understand, where am I going to spend most of my time in the development process? Like, again, I thought, okay, room creation is not going to take me this long. Room creation took me a couple of weeks, but at the same point in time, I didn't think it was going to take me as long as it did to get here. And then, so I think that kind of made me understand, I need to understand how difficult this project is that I'm trying to approach, and how long it is going to take to tackle some of what I think is going to be easy versus understanding how not easy that is. This is a project, I guess. I don't know where I'm going with this. I mean, it was just kind of like, all right, I want to be able to show people what I'm doing, because this is kind of cool and it's fun, and I enjoy editing and making videos, and I also enjoy creating. So I realized, like, from a twofold perspective, this is going to be difficult. This is going to take me a lot of time. I don't know. I have really bad commitment issues. But here I am looking at this and going, this feels like it'd be kind of fun to do. And I also realized that many of my other friends who know me could also mention how many random different projects I have started in the past and then completely just stopped. So I feel like this is another side of me going, hey, this is kind of worth it, because I'm struggling very, very hard to go ahead and get this to even get off the ground. And from like a second standpoint, I also feel like, well, hey, maybe if somebody else is trying to do something similar and they incidentally end up coming across this video and they see me struggling and I have no clue what I'm doing, maybe they'll feel like, oh, hey, it's worth whatever they're doing if I'm still going at it. So, I don't know. Weird thought. If it seems impossible, it's worth it, and this idea is honestly impossible for me to accomplish right now. I don't have the skill set, I don't have the knowledge base, and I've made it this far. So, I guess in a sense it's reassuring to see that my struggle has managed to get me this far away. I mean, as they say, ganbare, right? You know? I don't know. Random thoughts to the wind. This is kind of a long ending. Sorry about that, but to those who did watch this far and listen to my rant, thanks. I appreciate you. I'm going to keep doing this, even if it's super difficult, even if the uploads are random, even if I have no idea what I'm doing. So I hope you all stay tuned. I'm CrashLog, and you just watched a Chronicle.